morning, guys. We are going to be continuing on with our lesson from last week. So we started with vocab from photosynthesis. Does anybody want to volunteer to write up some of our vocab words on our word wall? You can write it just like right here. Any volunteers? Perfect. So what word do you remember from our lesson? You can pick any word.
I was going to do chlorophyll.
Chlorophyll is perfect. So go ahead and write up on the wall. So come on up. And you can write chlorophyll.
I don't know how to spell it. Is it
CHLOROPHYLL? Yeah. Chlorophyll. So,
two L's?
Two L's.
Oh, like
Excellent.
that?
Excellent.
Okay.
That's perfect. Who else would like to write one of our words up on the word wall? No volunteers? Verlaine, come on up. What word do you remember from our previous lesson?
I'm thinking chloroplast.
Chloroplast. Excellent. And I'm going to cut off there. So that's how I probably start off. I go through the vocab and then do a little bit of PowerPoint of a lesson to go over the concept of photosynthesis. And then I would jump into a diagram, which I'm going to kind of walk through you guys with. So if I were sitting in the stage for class, you guys would be making a brochure on your own. I'm going to draw what we would go over, and we're going to kind of label some of the parts. So in your guys' brochures that we're making, you're going to draw, and you guys don't have to, we're going to draw a leaf. So why would I draw a leaf if we're talking about photosynthesis?
Because that's where it happens.
Because that's where it happens. So we're going to draw a leaf. Now, photosynthesis doesn't just happen like right on the surface of the leaf. It's happening inside on the cellular level. So within our leaf, we can do a cutout of it. There is the leaf with all of its layers. So they're all the cells, and it's happening in the chloroplast within the cells on the surface of the leaf, and then air is coming through the bottom. So in the chloroplast, that's what we're going to draw. We're going to draw the process that's happening. So from one of these chloroplasts, we're going to blow it up and draw right here. So what is coming into the leaf that's providing all of the energy?
Light.
Sunlight.
Sunlight. So if you guys draw sunlight, we would have the sun up here, but light comes in and hits the chloroplast. So it comes in, it enters in, and it breaks up the water. Now where does the water come from to perform this process? Do you guys remember? The roots, exactly. So water comes up from the roots, and it's sucked all the way up to the xylem and phloem. We're going to talk about that later. Up into the leaf. So the water is hit by the sunlight. The chlorophyll in the chloroplast helps break it apart, and then it goes over and is made into glucose. So H2O, it's split up. The hydrogen goes over to the dark reaction, which we're going to explain later on over here, and then the oxygen comes out. And now why is the oxygen important? What's important about the oxygen? So we can breathe it? So we can breathe it, exactly. So part of it is split up, oxygen comes out for us to breathe. The hydrogen goes over to the dark reaction. I almost forgot what I was going to do. And this is where sugar is made. Do you remember the name of the sugar that plants produce? Glucose? Glucose, exactly. Now, is it just made out of hydrogen? Does anybody know?
No.
No. What else is made, or what else is it made out of?
Carbon.
Carbon. And where's that carbon come from? You guys know?
Air.
The air. So the air, the CO2 from the air goes into the leaf, makes its way into the chloroplast, and it is cycled around through the dark reaction. So we've got our water, it's split up, we've got our CO2, it's going to go in here, and it's going to make glucose. So turning to your partners, whoever's sitting next to you, each of you guys should have a note card. Can you guys discuss together what the word equation is for photosynthesis? So we've mentioned some of the key terms, the word equation. Some of you guys that are math people, I can walk around and help you with it. But we're going to write down the word equation for photosynthesis. So Word equation. So, word equation, what that means is we're mentioning the parts that go into it. So glucose and carbon dioxide, and we talked about water.
That is what it's on, right?
So
Carbon dioxide plus water equals C6H12.
yeah, equals exactly. So we're
Plus H2O. Like this?
Water, I'm just doing water.
CO2.
Their word sentence.
Plus.
CO2 plus H2O equals not what there yet. Well, because this is going to give you.
So what is it?
Carbon dioxide plus water equals to C6H12O6. Which then the H.
H plus CO2
So then the H plus the CO2
to,
in the dark reaction.
so just HC goes to, just
Yes, it is. Is equal to glucose, which is a chain of hydrogen.
And that is our word equation.
Anybody have any questions? Anyone has any trouble?
Glucose is just hydrogen and carbon.
It is not, and we can go over that in just a moment.
Because that's when they open it up a little.
Let these guys. Okay. So, are you guys? Is it working out? Have you guys come up to a consensus as to what the word equation might be?
Yes.
Yes. Does anybody want to volunteer their equation? Okay, go ahead, Lily. What do you guys have?
Okay, we have CO2 plus H2O, and then we have an arrow, like in a chemical reaction,
Okay.
is O2 plus glucose, and that's photosynthesis.
Okay, so you have CO2 plus, you said
H2O,
H2O,
and then an arrow, and then O2
O2
plus glucose.
plus glucose. So, you've got a bit of a combination between both the chemical equation and the word equation. So CO2, also called carbon dioxide, plus H2O, which is commonly known as water. Looks like gives us oxygen plus glucose. So this, and I should have explained that to them, so that was my fault. This is the word equation. This is really close to the chemical equation. Now, I had someone with a question about what glucose is, so would you like to repeat your question?
so is it just HC or?
It is not. So, in here, it makes it seem like when this O2 goes, that makes it seem like the oxygen just disappears from the equation, but it doesn't. So, the oxygen from the hydrogen, H2O, that leaves, but the oxygen that is part of the CO2 becomes part of the glucose molecule. So glucose is actually C6H12O6, and that is your glucose molecule. So that's how it combines together.
Thank you.
That's a really good question because you want to make sure you understand where all of the molecules are going. So, in your guys' brochure, oh, we have one more question?
Yeah, where does the light come in?
Where's the light come in? Where do you think it comes in?
I mean, it's I would call it a reaction.
It's a reaction. Is it used up?
No.
No, it's not exactly used up. What it happens is it's kind of converted. So, since we aren't like taking light and transforming it in that way, like it's not coming in light and then leaving light, it comes in and provides the energy to split this up. So sometimes when you draw this equation, you might represent light as coming in just right here to give that spark for the energy, or for the equation to happen, or process to happen.
Right. Okay.
So that's where light would kind of come into play.
Okay.
Some other people represent it within the actual equation, but I don't exactly like to write it that way. But
That makes
as long
sense.
as you can remember that it goes in and provides energy for the process. So that's a very good question. So after I've done this, I would have the students continue on. We work through the rest of the process and go through the brochure. And then we would kind of talk about it a little more, and then they'd write down the process in their own words through like a writing break for a bit of an assessment after we do some more explanation of the process. So that's what I've got. In theory, what the brochure would look like at the end is you'd have like your brochure. Oh, let's zoom